Hello YouTube, it's Pacman here and welcome to another stream. So today we will talk about Firebase integration and we will start a new series of our live tutorials, and it will be a chat app that I will tell you in further streams more about it. As a first tutorial, I will show you how to integrate Firebase in our app, because we will need that. If you like my channel and my videos and streams, just give a like and subscribe to my channel as always. Let's just get started. So what is the agenda? First of all, I will tell you some things about Firebase. What is that? What are the pros and cons of using Firebase? Then we will create a Firebase project in the Firebase console, and we will integrate our Firebase in our Flutter app. And as the last thing, we'll test our Firebase integration by maybe retrieving some data from Cloud Firestore, which will be basically our database. So let's start about Firebase. Firebase is made by Google. It's a perfect tool for creating backend for our mobile application, both for Android and iOS. And he has many features that are easy to integrate and that are really good with working with each other in Firebase, and everything is basically cloud-based. So the features that Firebase allows us to integrate in our application is the authentication, so whole login and registering user features, like login by Google, login by Facebook, login by phone number or email. So different authentication providers can be used there. Second of all, Firebase allows us to have some kind of a cloud-based database like Cloud Firestore, which is no SQL database. However, it's cloud-based and it's pretty fast and scalable. Then we can also use cloud functions, which basically, in other words, means that we can create our API, our backend there. For example, we can create some HTTP requests. We can create some scheduled functions that runs on our database in Cloud Firestore, or we can also create database triggers. By database triggers, I mean our Cloud Firestore database trigger. Apart from that, we can use Firebase as storage to store files of our users, for example, like photos, audio files, documents, and so on, that users use in our storage. But you can also store any other type of files for administration, for example, or anything that can be used by our application, and that is called cloud storage. And also Firebase allows us to secure our app more by making an object for our application. So for example, we can use Play Integrity for Android, and there are also some tools for checking the app on iOS. And mainly this is used to allow our users to use our application only from the Play Store, for example. So whenever there will be a person that recompiles our application into the code, then the user won't be able to use our Firebase backend, because it will be disallowed by this object. Anyway, let's go to the pros and cons of Firebase. Well, let's start with pros. Basically, Firebase is cloud-based, which means that everything is in cloud. It's not like a single server that we need to buy and we need to manually scale, because Firebase has a very cool feature of auto scaling our cloud, basically, or servers that are in the cloud, and therefore the speed, the response time is really low, which is really good for our application. So whenever there's a bigger traffic in our application, then Firebase auto scales our backend so that the speed remains the same and it's still really low response times. Also, the integration is really easy, as you will see in this video. When you want to integrate your Firebase with your app, especially with Flutter, everything in one place. So it's so cool to use cloud storage and Cloud Firestore and cloud functions with each other, because the integration is really cool there, and it's really easy to write cloud functions that, for example, the triggers function, because you can easily add or remove something from your Firebase in cloud function. Also the price, because in Firebase has a pricing of pay as you go, which means that you pay for a traffic that is registered in your app, and there are some limits that are free of use. So like some number of operations for reading, writing, and deleting from our database, from Cloud Firestore, for example, some gigabytes that can be stored in our cloud storage monthly, like traffic sizes, and so on, which for the beginners, like for people who learns Firebase, or for some simple applications, basically those limits should be enough without paying. However, as you also see, I put price as a con of our of Firebase, because whenever you have bigger application, or we have application that requires a lot of traffic every day or every minute, then your monthly bill can be really high, and maybe Firebase would be not a best choice to use as your backend for every application. So that's why I'll also put not for every app, because you need to basically estimate how much traffic you will need for your database, and if it's an app that requires a large amount of traffic every minute, for example, then probably you shouldn't use Firebase and just use like a standard server-based solution. Also, if we are talking about cons, the main con is the database. The Cloud Firestore is no SQL database, which basically means that you cannot use some compound queries from SQL, like inner joins, for example. And it's the Firebase Cloud Firestore database has its own limits, and has its own limits for single queries. So, for example, we can use only one in equality comparison in one query, and if you would like to have some more compound queries for one table, then you just need to create separate queries and then merge them. And therefore your number of reading operations will be higher, and therefore you can pay more for that. So yeah, you need to be careful, and whenever you are in the planning phase of your application, you need to take this into account. And I recommend you to read about the Cloud Firestore limitations of on querying, and you can all find this in the Firebase official documentation. However, we'll create chat app, and for chat app, I think Firebase will be good enough to use, and you will see that it's so cool to use Firebase in our mobile app. To continue, I'll just lower a little bit the music. And to continue, let's just start by adding our Firebase project. To do that, we go to the Firebase console. If you don't have your Firebase account, then please create it now. It's free to create your account. However, you will see that there are some free and paid plans that you can choose when you create a project. So let's just create a project. Let's start with a name for your project, and I will just name it random chat, because that will be our application. And let's just continue. Google Analytics can be helpful for you, so as you can see, it's free and unlimited analytics solution. So yeah, why shouldn't we use it? So let's just use it. Click continue. You need to also configure your Google Analytics account. I have a default account for Firebase. If you would like to choose a different one, then just create a new one. Let's create a project. It will take some time to do that. So yeah, in the meantime, I can ask you to leave a comment and give a like if you like this video. If you have any comment or you have any suggestion what I can do better, then of course you are welcome to put a comment as well. It can be really helpful for myself to develop this channel. As you can see, this channel is just starting, so I hope it will be better in the future, and will be growing and growing and have more community. So okay, your project is ready, my project is ready, so I can just click continue. And now I am redirected to the main page of our project. The first thing that we will do, we'll create an Android application that will use this Firebase console. So let's just click Android. Let's put Android package name. Of course, it's not in a Play Store, so we need to use the name of our domain, and in my case it's packsoftware.com, and just name it random.chat, for example. Also, the nickname of our application will be random chat. We also need to write the debug signing certificate, and we can see this page to how to get this debug signing certificate. So basically, for debugging, we have separate certificate that display app signing. So you have the command how to get the debug certificate thumbprint, and basically it's in your user profile folder. So basically, see user Android debug key store. So basically we can do that. So I can just copy that. I can just open my command line. Of course, I won't show you. Oh, wait a second. I won't show the output of this command because my debug certificate thumbprint is Oh, maybe I will just do it in PowerShell because it's my secret, so I won't show you this this debug certificate. However, okay, because that's 2 lines, so pasting it is not really a cool thing to do. So maybe I can just prepare my command and then run it. So I just need to change my path, which I will do in a second. So yeah, if you are watching this from not live, then you can of course forward this to the point when I continue doing those things. So so maybe I can do something like this and something like this. Okay, so that's my path, so I can just copy that and use it in PowerShell. However, as I told you, I won't show it to you the output of this command, because that's my debug certificate, so I don't want you to use my debug certificate in any way whenever you would get the history file. Okay, so I need and you will be asked for password, so use Android. Of course you don't see it, however I can see already my SHA1 certificate thumbprint, and here I need to put SHA1 debug signing certificate thumbprint, and I'll just do it now. Of course you won't see it, but I will continue whenever I've done it. So I'm just pasting it. I just click register app button that you saw. Okay, I can continue. So now I have steps what to do to download and then add config file. So I need to download our Google services.json file, which of course obviously from security reasons I cannot show you as well. So let's just save it on our desktop. And as you can see, Firebase tells us where to put this file, and this should be added in our app folder. It is in Android folder, in app folder. So basically, if we go to our project, which basically this is like an empty Flutter project that I created by running the command flutter create and then random_chat. So now we can just close this, and we need to pass this file into Android app folder, and I'll just pass it. So as you can see, I pass it in the Android app folder, Google services.json. So now we can go back to our Firebase console. We can click next, and we have another instructions. We need to add the Firebase SDK. So what we need to do, we need to go to our build. Sorry, I just ate my lunch or dinner. So now we need to make sure that we have Google and Maven Central repositories, and we need to add the dependency for the Google Services Gradle plugin. So let's just copy this line, because in most scenarios Google and Maven Central repositories should be added already in the build.gradle file whenever you create an app from the flutter create command. So now we need to go to the build.gradle file, to our app. sorry, it's the build.gradle file from the Android folder, not the app folder. So as you can see, Google and Maven Central are there, and also they are in the build script node and also all project node. So now if we go back to our third step in our Firebase console of adding this application, we need to add to dependencies the Google services. So let's go back to our build.gradle file. We have dependencies. We can add class path of our Google services. Let's just save this file and let's just go back to the website. And then we are also asked to add the Firebase SDK also in the build.gradle file in the app folder. So first of all, we basically maybe we can be a little bit quicker. So let's just go to the build.gradle file from our app folder. Of course, you don't see it all. However, if you go down and go to the dependencies, we need to import the Firebase BOM and also Firebase Analytics. So let's just copy those two lines and go back and just pass it in our dependencies. So Firebase Analytics and also the Firebase BOM. And also we need to add the Google Service Gradle plugin. So just copy this and add this to the plugins section. Okay, we can do that in both ways. We can add those plugin. However, we can also apply the plugin with double dot. So we can just use something like this, and we can just copy the ID. So call Google GMS Google Services plugin and apply it like other plugins are applied. So we can just paste it. Of course, we need to remove the ID prefix before Google GMS Google Services. Let's just save it. Okay, we can click next. You are all set, so we can continue to console. And here we go. We have our random chat. So let's just see what we have in the Firestore database. We'll need that for our testing for Cloud Firestore. However, before that, if we write if you look for Firebase documentation and set up in our Flutter application, then we can see that the steps are specified here. However, there is one difference, because I showed you how to create a project and create an application in the Firebase project from the Firebase console. However, we can do exactly the same things in the Flutter CLI, which we need to install, and we need to, of course, log in from command line. And yeah, we can use Flutter configure command to do such thing. However, I recommend you to do that from the UI from the beginning, because Flutter configure can be a little bit misleading for the beginners, and it can also, yeah, basically then you can see a lot of stuff here that was created by Flutter CLI. I mean, in Firebase console, you can see what was created by Flutter Fire CLI. So you can just ignore those two steps for now and do what I have shown you just before that. So basically you can use Firebase console, so the user interface for doing such things. But the thing that we are interested now is the step 3. So we need to initialize Firebase in our application in the Flutter code. So what we need to do, we need to add the Firebase core package, which basically is from the pub.dev site. And yeah, you have also the documentation for Flutter Fire. However, my suggestion is that they didn't update the site because they made a note that this page is archived. So maybe you should no longer look at this documentation. However, they have a link to the site that I have just shown you. So yeah, let's go back to our steps. So we need to add the Firebase core to our project, to pubspec.yaml file. So let's go back to our project. Let's just open the folder of the root folder of our application. Let's just pass the code used for adding the Firebase core. Let's just press enter, sorry. So our dependencies are resolved now. What we can do, just to be sure, we can check pubspec.yaml file, and if we go to our dependencies, we can see that Firebase core has been added to our configuration file. And now what we need to do, we need to go to the main.dart file and to our main method that runs our application. If we go back to our steps, then we can see that we need to initialize Firebase using the Firebase Initialize app. Firebase Initialize app function. When you use Flutter Fire, then you can also use the options, default Firebase options current platform. But these options, yeah, basically I think this is like the default value of options property, but you can check that just in a second. You could see that we also can ensure that our Firebase is set up correctly to a correct project by running Flutter Fire configure. However, as I told you, I didn't use Flutter Fire. I used just Firebase console to configure our app. And what we will do now, we'll just copy maybe not copy, but we'll just write the Firebase Initialize app function in our main method. Of course, needs to be asynchronous. And let's just write await and let's search for Firebase. And as we can see, we are auto-suggested that we have auto-suggestion that yeah, we can use the Firebase core package. So let's just use it. We have the Initialize app. And yeah, basically that's it. We don't need to use options, to be honest, because I've created a few apps with that Firebase and I didn't use any options. However, to be absolutely sure, and if you are using Flutter Fire, then I recommend you to be strict to the documentation of Firebase. So yeah, as I told you in the previous video, when I initialize mobile ads, I also run the widget binding, widgets Flutter binding, if I remember correctly, ensure initialized. which needs to be run before initializing any other external package like Google AdMob SDK or Firebase. It's a good practice to write this command at the beginning. So yeah, that should be it actually. However, now we will not see anything that is working from our Firebase. So what we will do, we will create our Cloud Firestore database, and to do that, we just go back to our Firebase console. Let's just create the Cloud Firestore database. We'll start in the test mode, and as you can see, production mode and test mode differs in security rules, because security rules are like a separate feature for Cloud Firestore when you can specify who has access to a specific tables or specific amount of data. And that is really important, because whenever you are in production mode, you don't want all users to allow to connect to your database, but you need only to specify what type of users can read what data, write what the data, delete what data. That is really important. However, when you are in a test mode, it doesn't really matter, because we should be only allowed to use that database. Of course, when you are testing, do not share your Google services.json or any security things with other developers, because they can just spam your database and you will pay anyway just for testing your database. However, we will start in a test mode. So yeah, all requests that are before the today no, sorry. Yeah, the requests that are before today plus 30 days are allowed. So any requests within 30 days from today are allowed. So let's go next. We need to set up our location of Cloud Firestore. So basically, where are the servers located? So I will use Europe, because that's the servers that are located closer to me. So let's just enable our Cloud Firestore, and we need to wait a little bit. Yeah, we set setting up security rules. Yeah, and our Firestore is created. So what we will do, we'll create a collection, which in SQL database could be equivalent to a table. So the collection, or basically the structure of data in Cloud Firestore is that you have a collection. Collection can have a single document or multiple documents, and each document can have a separate collection. And yeah, you can have like a hierarchy of collection, document, collection, document, yeah, and so on and so on. So let's just name it users. And we can create our first document ID. Let's just create a test data. So let's just create a test user here. And let's just, I don't know, name it name maybe. And just name it John. And maybe age. And let be number and 32, for example. And let's save. As we can see, we have some data. And as I told you, we can start a new sub-collection of a document. And then sub-collection can have its own documents. And then each document can have its own sub-collection. So yeah, that's how it works. So now, when we will go back to our Firebase setup Flutter. If we go back to our documentation, we should see that we can add some Firebase plugins. And as you can see, there are some plugin names for separate Firebase products that I told you about. For example, Cloud Firestore, Cloud Functions, Cloud Messaging, which can be used for sending like notifications to your phone, which is another feature of Firebase, or yeah, some other products that you can read about. But we are interested in our Cloud Functions. So if we write Firebase, sorry, not Cloud Functions, but of course Cloud Firestore, Firebase Firestore pub dev. If we search for that, we have our Cloud Firestore package that we can use. Of course, there is reference to the documentation, but yeah, how to do that? We can just use Flutter pub add Cloud Firestore. So let's just copy the code. We don't need PowerShell anymore. So let's just pass it. Let's just add pub add Cloud Firestore. So yeah, it is added. So now what we will do, we'll just create our API folder. So let's go to APIs. And let's just create another file, which will be our API that will fetch data from our users collection, which will be, let's say, Firestore users API.dart file. And here let's just create a class Firestore users API. And first thing that we'll need to do is the name of our collection, and as I showed you, unnamed users. So let's just name it static const. It's a private property. So private properties are starting with underscore. And yeah, let's just name it collection name to the users. Then let's just create a method that will fetch our data. However, before doing that, I will create our users model. So basically, it will be a class that will represent our users collection. So each user, well, basically now we have one user, but we will have more. But each of them will have age, a name. There. So basically, to do that, we need a user model class with age and name properties. So to do that, we'll just create a folder called models. Then just create a new file called user, or maybe Firestore user.dart. Class Firestore user. Remember about casing your class names and naming your files. Good practice is to use lowercase text with underscores between words, and class names first letter of each word should be uppercase. Okay, so now let's just create our age and name. So let's just name it final string name and final int age. And now we need to create a constructor for our final fields, and we have a quick fix suggestion: create constructor for final fields. Our constructor is created. However, for models, I would suggest you to use name constructors and use required word in the name constructors, because when our user class will have more attributes, that will be used in our constructor. So then, without named arguments, it will be kind of easy to use wrong values for wrong attributes or properties in our constructor. Anyway, let's just save it. And what we will do now, we'll create mapping methods. So what we would need to do, we will need to map our, let's say we have existing user, or we want to have a user added to our Firestore. So what we need to do, we need to create a mapping method that will map our object, that is a Firestore user, to a map, or basically readable structure that can be read by the Cloud Firestore. And that structure is basically JSON structure, and in Dart language, in Flutter, JSON basically means map of string and then a dynamic value, which will be integer, string, date, time, or whatever. So let's just continue. Let's just create a function for mapping. So first function will be mapping our Firestore user to JSON, and to do that we need to return map, which key is string and value is dynamic, because it can be string or int in our case, but it can be also like boolean, date, time, or and maybe some other types. So let's just name it to JSON. And what we need to do, we need to return the map, and to return the map we need to return those parentheses, and we just created an empty map, so we need to create first key, and our first key will be called name. That name is basically our name, and then age, and the same, age is our basically age property from our project. What we need to do for mapping is also mapping the reading operation. So we need to read the data that we have created already in our Cloud Firestore. So we have created our test user, so we need to read the data that is in Cloud Firestore format to our Firestore user class. To do that, we can create a constructor, which will be Firestore user dot from JSON, and as an argument we'll put the JSON file, which will be also map string dynamic JSON file, and that JSON will be of course our Cloud Firestore data. So now, of course I did it wrong. We need to create a constructor that basically uses the default constructor, so this one. So that's why we use this word here. So our name is basically JSON file with name key. Of course, we assume that is a string. We also need to put age, and as you can think that it will be age key. And we also assume that it's an integer. Otherwise, if it's not an integer, then we have a mapping error. Okay, so we have our Firestore user model class and functions that we can use in our API. So now, what will they use? We will basically return our user, which will be in a method, in a static method. In further live tutorials, I will change this API to be interface based, but as you know from previous lives, Dart language does not have interface, it just has abstract classes that can be used as interface when we are used to other programming languages. However, what we need to do, we need to return Firestore user. So let's just name it read test user, and we need to return Firestore user from the Firebase Cloud Firestore. So what we need to do, this needs to be future, because that will be asynchronous operation. So we can maybe do it in try catch block. So whenever we catch an error, we just throw exception dot toString, for example. And what we'll do now, let's just read our test user document, and to do that we need to write await Firebase Firestore.instance dot collection. Our collection is users, so our static const collection name. And now, as I told you, collection has document, and document can be accessed by doc, and path to our document is basically the ID of our document, and in our case is this test user. And it's mainly because whenever we go back to our data, our document ID was named test user, because I manually created it. Okay. We can also specify the converter that we can use. So we can specify what are the mapping methods from and to Firestore, and basically those methods we have created these methods already in our Firestore user class. However, we need to specify what type is used in our converter, and to do that we need to put in parentheses our Firestore user class, and we can write here from Firestore, which should be a function that has snapshot and option, anonymous function that has snapshot and options arguments. And basically to do that we write snapshot options. And now, as you can see, our snapshot is a map string dynamic document snapshot, of map, and from Firestore means that we need to use our constructor that we have created. So Firestore user from JSON, and our JSON will be snapshot.data, which will be our map. And because it's nullable, we need to force it to be not nullable by writing the sign. So let's just fix the, or maybe not. Let's just, options are not used here, so we can just write underscore. It's a good practice whenever you use anonymous function and one of the arguments is not used in execution, then you can use just underscore. And a similar thing will be used in to Firestore function. So as arguments we have value and options. And now what we will use, we'll use our value, which value is basically Firestore user, so maybe let's just name it user, and it is just user to JSON. And basically that's it. That's the whole getting operation with converter. Of course, we need to, at the end, we need to add the get method, and that get method actually makes a call to our Firebase, because till this moment we just created a query, just single query, and our get operation actually gets the data from server. So if we see our get operation returns the future from document snapshot, and we have await, so we can specify our snapshot to a variable. So let's just call it snapshot. And yeah, if we go to snapshot and see what is there, we can see that document snapshot from Firebase or Firestore SDK have some attributes and methods. So exist specifies if our document exists in our Firebase. So if we would, let's say, write test user2, then the exist would be set to false. But we want to retrieve our test user, so the exist will be true. Anyway, we are interested in data, which will return our Firestore user. Of course, data is nullable, so we can force it to be not nullable. Of course, if the test user does not exist, here we will be caught by exception, and we will throw an exception whenever this red test user is called, and the red test user will be called in our main widget. So yeah, let's just do the main widget. Oh, not the home widget. As you can see, I used here the default example of our application. So maybe first thing what we can do, we can just delete the comments. So let's just search it by this and just remove the comments. And let's just remove the widget, stateful widget that was created in the main.dart file. And as I showed you in previous tutorial, I prefer to have separate folders for our screens and widgets. And let's just create our home screen for the Dart file. And let's just create stateless widgets, home screen, of course, static cons root name, which is home, and return scaffold. To be a really simple application, so for now, so let's just create a body, and for body, let's just create future builder, or maybe not, maybe future builder. Future builder is useful whenever we use functions that returns future, and based on the data returned by future, we can specify what we need, what we can return, or when the data is loading. In the meantime, we can specify the SQL progress indicator. And by first, let's just specify the future. Let's just specify the type of data we want to return. So we want to return Firestore user, so the same as API returns. Let's just refer to our Firestore users API, read test user, and for our builder, let's just see that we need context in our snapshot. And here we can check if our snapshot, our connection state is waiting. And if it's waiting, then we can just return center child circular progress indicator. Of course, this can be changed to our constant widget. This means that whenever we are waiting until the response from our Firebase, then we can show the progress indicator so that users know that something is loading, which is also a good practice to do. Then we can check if our snapshot has an error. If it has an error, then we can just return text and yeah, then just name it error. So this snapshot has error will be this will be true whenever our API catch an error and throws an exception. Then yeah, what we can check if snapshot does not have any data, which it can be helpful whenever you want to read a collection of data, not just only one document. So we can just return const text no data. This is of course really simple example of reading the data, and in other situation we'll just return text, and we will just use a snapshot, or maybe before that we can just specify our user, which will be snapshot.data. Sorry, it will be just the property, not a function. Data, of course, it's nullable, so we need to force it to be not nullable. And what we can say, so let's say we want to show name by simple text, which will be with simple concatenation of string to be username, and then we can specify age, and age will be our user.age. Of course, we need to change it to string. And as you can see, there is a little bit suggestion that we can replace this with interpolation, and then our concatenation looks really nice here. And as you can see, we have an error in our main.dart file. This is mainly because we need to use our home screen. Let's just save it. I think everything should be ready. So now let's open our emulator, our Pixel emulator that we used in previous tutorials. Let's just wait until it loads. Because let's just make our code window wider. Of course, you can rewind this process whenever you are not watching this tutorial live. I'll try to make chapters. However, I don't have 1000 subscribers yet, so you can only see chapters in the description below. So if subscribe, so whenever I have 1000 subscribers, sorry, you will see the chapters in the playing bar. Yeah. Okay, so let's just run our application. Hopefully everything is working now, and I didn't make any mistake. However, yeah, it's live, so everything can go wrong, as always in life in general, and it's programming. So yeah, you need to be really patient and be prepared that you will have some bugs or debugging errors that you'll need to fix. I'm pretty sure you'll have one, as already you can see I have one. No magic client firm for package name. No magic client firm for package name. Okay, something is wrong. I'm not sure what. Okay, maybe first of all remove on unused. Let's just, to be sure, try again, but probably it won't work. Let me just see if I have created Cloud file. Okay, still doesn't work. No magic client var. Found for package name. Common example Android. Let's just go to our Firebase console. What we can do? Maybe we can use the package ID that we used in our Firebase. Maybe it will help. So let's just rename our common example random chat to the application ID that we used in Firebase. Maybe that is something that we have created wrong. If not, then you can put in comments if I would be able to resolve this in this live. Then we'll fix it. If not, then you can put in a comment what I did wrong. If I wouldn't be able to fix it now, then I'll just try to find a solution outside the live, and then I will let you know in a video, in shorts maybe, what was wrong. So yeah, we have renamed our bundle ID. So maybe let's just try to run it again. Okay, something is definitely wrong. I'm just curious why. Oh. Okay, it seems like we haven't replaced it. Sorry. Okay, let's just... Okay, now let's just clear the debug console and try to run again. Yeah, the thing is that I haven't run it even once, this application. Okay, now it complains about minimal SDK version of our Android. Okay, so therefore we need to go to our build.gradle file, to the default config section, and let's just put the 19 min SDK version. This is the requirement for Firebase. Let's just start again, and yeah, let's hope it will work now. Of course, if you don't have your domain name but you want to use the Firebase, then you can specify the com example for your testing. But yeah, as you can see, I'm still not having issues. Okay, it seems like we need to add the multi-dex support, and to do that we can just search it how to do it. So multi-dex is always is often a problem whenever we use some more complicated dependencies. So what we need to do, we need to add to our build.gradle file in app multi-dex enabled to true based on the one of the Stack Overflow answers, and I'm pretty sure it will work because I had this issue before. So let's go to our build.gradle file, to our app. So into the dependencies, let's just add the multi-dex, and to our default config we need to have multi-dex enabled set to true. Okay, so let's try again for the 5th time, I guess. As you can see, I mean, I told you Firebase integration itself is easy. However, there are some there are not similar, but there are some issues that can happen that are not related to Firebase, but more like when you use more complicated dependencies or yeah, something like that. That could happen like whenever using different dependency. Okay, that is a good sign that our application is up and running. Maybe you don't see that because I haven't added the save area in our scaffold widget. So whenever I save it now, you can see that our data was successfully fetched from our Firebase. And to confirm that is not a fake data that I just show you that it works, but because I put this text, hard-coded text there. Let's just go back to our data. Let's just change. I got an error. I got stuck. But anyway, let's just go back to our data. Let's just change our name to Pacman. Let's just update it, and let's go back to our code. Let's just rerun the application, and as you can see, the name has changed to Pacman, so our data is successfully fetched from Firebase. Okay, so for today, it is all that I wanted to show you. As you can see, our Cloud Firestore integration is working, so the whole Firebase integration seems to be working. I will also show you, to just confirm that it's working, we can also change the rules. So I can see the rules is that the time start date, whenever the request is before the 10th of November. However, we can change that to September and save the changes. And now, whenever we try to fetch the data again, we got an error because our request is after September. So yeah, as you can see, even error handling works. So yeah, that's end for today. So see you next time. Who is the best? It's Pacman here.